Hello, students! Today, we are going to begin our journey into one of the most important events in world history, the French Revolution.
But before we dive into the history of France, let's pause for a moment. We use this word revolution all the time. But have you ever really thought about what it truly means?
Okay, let's think about it like this, using an example from your school. Imagine your school decides to change the color of the uniform. That's a change, yes, but it's a gradual change. Now, imagine something different. What if, one day, all school rules are suddenly removed? The authority of the principal, the teachers, it's all overthrown. That would be a revolution. A sudden, drastic overthrow of the entire system.
All right, so now that we understand what a revolution is, you might be asking, why are we studying this one in particular? I mean, it happened so long ago in France. Why does it matter to us today?
Well, the reason is huge. This single event gave the world three powerful ideas that we often take for granted today. They are liberty, which simply means freedom, equality, the idea that everyone is equal in the eyes of the law, and fraternity, which means a sense of brotherhood among all citizens. Believe me, these ideas changed the world forever. So, to really understand why a revolution was needed in the first place, we must first look at what French society was like before it all happened, before the year 1789. Historians have a name for this period. They call it the Old Regime. I want you to just imagine living in a world where your entire life, your job, your rights, your future, was decided not by your talent, but simply by the family you were born into. That was the reality for most people in France at this time.
You see, French society under this old regime was not united. It was very clearly divided into three distinct social classes, and these classes were known as the Three Estates. Okay, let's have a look at this diagram. It's a great way to see how that society was structured. It was like a pyramid, you see. At the very top, you had the small but very powerful first and second estates. And at the bottom, making up this huge base, was the third estate. So who were these people? Well, the first estate was the clergy, the officials of the church. The second estate was the nobility, the landlords and the aristocrats. Now, both of these groups enjoyed many privileges simply because of their birth. And here's the most important point. They were exempt from paying taxes to the state. Now, look at this number, 90%. Just think about that. Peasants made up about 90% of the entire population. And which estate do you think they belonged to? That's right, they all belonged to the third estate. So the third estate was, well, it was everyone else, from big businessmen, merchants, and lawyers, all the way down to peasants, artisans, small peasants, landless laborers, and servants. It was a very, very big and diverse group. This brings us to a very common misunderstanding that we really need to clarify. Looking at that diverse list, do you think every single person in the third estate was poor? No, not at all. Actually, the third estate also included a prosperous and educated middle class. These were people like merchants, manufacturers, and professionals like lawyers. In fact, some of them were even richer than many of the nobles. But they still lacked the privileges that came just by birth. So as you can probably tell, the system wasn't just divided, it was deeply unfair. And this unfairness was most clear when it came to money, taxes, and duties. So who paid the taxes? It's simple. The third estate alone. The entire financial burden of running the state, the army, the court, government offices, it all fell on their shoulders. They paid direct taxes to the state, like the one called taille, and they paid taxes to the church, called tithes. On top of all that, they also had to pay indirect taxes on everyday items, like salt and tobacco. And for the peasants, life was even tougher. On top of all the taxes, they were also bound by feudal obligations. This meant they had to work on the lord's land for free, serve in the army, or participate in building roads. And they still had to pay other feudal dues to the nobles. This image from that time, it explains the situation so perfectly. It's a very famous drawing. It shows the nobleman as a spider, and the poor peasant is shown as a fly, caught in the spider's web. And the caption says it all. The nobleman is the spider, the peasant the fly. The more the devil has, the more he wants. You can see the peasant bringing everything, grain, fruit, money, while the lord just sits there ready to take it all. It shows how the privileged classes lived off the hard work of the common people. So I want you to imagine that pyramid again. The massive base, the third estate, is trembling under the huge weight of the tiny, privileged top. This was the reality in France, and it was a situation that could not last for long.
So you had the vast majority of people working very hard but living in poverty. And at the same time, this small, privileged minority at the top enjoyed all the wealth and paid absolutely no taxes. This deep inequality, which was based only on which family you were born into, was the main reason for the growing anger that would soon explode into revolution. So let's have a quick recap of what we've learned. French society was divided into three estates. The first and second estates were privileged and paid no taxes, and the third estate bore the entire financial burden. The whole system was fundamentally unfair. I want to leave you with a question to think about. Can a society where your rights and opportunities are decided only by your birth ever be truly fair? Think about this, because in our next lesson, we will see what happens when the people of France decided the answer was no.